Master Sergeant Helena Voss stepped through the terminal doors, her desert boots silent against the polished floor. The weight of 3 deployments pressed against her shoulders, invisible but constant. Her uniform was regulation perfect, pressed and clean, yet somehow she felt the stares of travelers in their business suits and designer clothes. The boarding gate buzzed with first-class passengers filing toward the aircraft. Helena checked her ticket again, seat 14C, middle of coach. She had requested the upgrade using her military travel voucher, a small hope after 18 months overseas. The gate agent barely looked up when Helena approached the counter. "Excuse me, I submitted an upgrade request this morning," Helena said quietly. The agent's fingers clicked across the keyboard without enthusiasm. The young woman's eyes flicked to Helena's uniform, then to the computer screen. "I see the request here, but first class is completely full. Sorry about that." Helena nodded and stepped aside. Behind her, a man in an expensive suit pushed forward, his voice carrying across the waiting area. "I need to be in first class today. This is absolutely unacceptable." The same gate agent suddenly became animated, her smile bright and accommodating. "Of course, sir. Let me see what I can do for you." Helena watched the businessman stride past her toward the first-class boarding line, his upgrade secured within minutes. The gate agent avoided eye contact as Helena returned to her seat in the general boarding area. Around her, other passengers chatted about vacation plans and business meetings, their voices light with anticipation. A woman in designer heels glanced at Helena's uniform and whispered to her companion. "Probably just trying to get special treatment," she said, not bothering to lower her voice. "They all think they deserve upgrades just for wearing that uniform." Helena kept her eyes forward, her hands folded in her lap. She had learned long ago that responding only made things worse. The boarding announcement crackled through the speakers, calling first-class passengers to the gate. Helena remained seated, waiting for her group to be called. As the privileged passengers filed past, she noticed a man in casual clothes near the first-class line. He wore simple jeans and a navy polo shirt, but something about his posture suggested military training. His eyes swept the boarding area with practiced awareness, the kind of vigilance that came from years of scanning for threats in hostile territory. Their eyes met briefly. The man's gaze lingered on Helena's uniform, taking in details that others missed. The ribbon rack above her left pocket, the subtle wear patterns on her boots, the way she carried herself despite the civilian dismissal around her. The boarding process continued as Helena waited for her group to be called. The businessman who had secured her upgrade passed by again, this time making a show of his first-class boarding pass. "Some people just expect handouts," he said loudly to his companion, glancing meaningfully at Helena. "Military or not, you earn your way up front." Helena's jaw tightened slightly, but her expression remained neutral. She thought of the convoy that had struck an IED 6 months ago, how she had spent 14 hours performing emergency surgery in a forward operating base with mortar rounds falling nearby. The Purple Heart recommendation still sat somewhere in Pentagon bureaucracy. The man in the polo shirt had boarded with the first-class passengers, but Helena noticed he had hesitated at the gate, looking back toward her with an expression she could not quite read. There was recognition there, something deeper than casual military courtesy. Finally, her boarding group was called. Helena stood and joined the line of coach passengers, her small carry-on bag slung over one shoulder. The flight attendant scanned her ticket with barely a glance, but Helena caught the woman's subtle eye roll when she saw the uniform. As Helena walked down the narrow aisle toward coach, she passed through first class. The seats were spacious and comfortable, with passengers already settling in with champagne and warm towels. The businessman who had taken what should have been her upgrade was sprawled across his seat, his shoes already off. Helena found her assigned seat in row 14, squeezed between a college student with oversized headphones and a businessman tapping aggressively on his laptop. The middle seat offered no armrest territory and barely enough legroom for someone who had spent months sleeping in cramped bunkers. She stowed her bag carefully and settled in, pulling out a worn paperback novel. The The pages were dog-eared from multiple readings during long nights on guard duty. Around her, passengers complained about delayed departures and cramped conditions, their voices carrying the casual irritation of people unaccustomed to genuine hardship. From her position, Helena could see into first class through the gap in the curtain. The man in the polo shirt was seated in 2A, but unlike the other passengers, he was not focused on his phone or the flight attendant offering drinks. His attention kept drifting back toward Coach, toward her section specifically. Something about his bearing reminded Helena of the special operations personnel she had worked with downrange. The way he sat perfectly still but alert, the methodical way his eyes swept the cabin. She had seen that same vigilance in the faces of soldiers who had operated behind enemy lines. The flight attendant announced they would begin taxiing shortly, but first class was experiencing a seating issue that needed to be resolved. Helena watched through the curtain gap as the man in 2A quietly unbuckled his seatbelt and stood up. The man in the polo shirt approached the lead flight attendant with quiet authority. Helena could not hear the conversation, but she watched as he gestured toward the coach section while speaking in low, measured tones. The flight attendant's expression shifted from casual customer service to something approaching respect. Behind Helena, passengers were growing restless with the delay. "That soldier girl probably caused some security issue," muttered a woman several rows back. "They should screen these military types more carefully before letting them on planes with normal people." Helena's knuckles whitened as she gripped her book, but she kept her breathing steady. She had endured worse than ignorant civilians during her 3 tours. The memory of carrying wounded soldiers through enemy fire while under direct assault made airplane gossip seem trivial by comparison. The flight attendant was now nodding earnestly at whatever the polo shirt man was telling her. She glanced toward Helena's section, then back to the man with newfound deference. Helena noticed other first-class passengers beginning to watch the interaction with curiosity. The businessman who had taken Helena's upgrade leaned into the aisle, clearly annoyed by the delay. "What is taking so long up there?" he demanded loudly. "Some of us have important meetings to get to." The flight attendant held up one finger, asking for patience as she continued her hushed conversation with the mysterious passenger. The flight attendant walked purposefully down the aisle toward Coach, stopping directly at Helena's row. "Excuse me, Master Sergeant," she said quietly, her tone completely transformed from the dismissive attitude at boarding. "Would you please come with me to the front of the aircraft?" Helena looked up from her book, confusion flickering across her face. The college student beside her pulled off his headphones, suddenly interested in the unfolding drama. Other passengers craned their necks to see what was happening to the soldier they had been whispering about moments before. "Is there a problem?" Helena asked, her voice steady despite the attention now focused on her. The flight attendant shook her head with a slight smile. "No problem at all, Master Sergeant. Please bring your belongings and follow me." Helena gathered her small bag and book, stepping carefully over the businessman's laptop cord. As she moved toward the front of the plane, conversations died throughout Coach. Passengers watched with a mixture of curiosity and barely concealed satisfaction, assuming she was being removed for some violation. The same woman who had complained about military screening whispered loudly to her companion. "I knew something was off about her. They probably found something suspicious in her background check." Helena kept walking forward, her shoulders straight and her expression composed despite the scrutiny. Helena followed the flight attendant through the curtain divider into first class, acutely aware of the stares from passengers who had dismissed her minutes earlier. The businessman who had secured her original upgrade looked up with smug satisfaction, clearly expecting to witness her removal from the aircraft. The man in the polo shirt stood as Helena approached, his posture unmistakably military despite his civilian clothes. "Master Sergeant Voss," he said quietly, extending his hand. "Commander Jake Reeves, Naval Special Warfare." The flight attendant's eyes widened slightly at the mention of his rank and unit. Helena shook his hand, still uncertain about what was happening. The commander gestured toward an empty first-class seat. "Master Sergeant, I believe this seat belongs to you. There has been a misunderstanding about your seating assignment that needs to be corrected immediately." The businessman who had taken Helena's upgrade overheard and leaned forward with indignation. "Excuse me, but I paid for this upgrade fair and square. You cannot just move people around because they are wearing uniform." Commander Reeves turned toward him with the kind of measured look that made hardened soldiers reconsider their life choices. The flight attendant stepped between them diplomatically. "Sir, we are simply correcting a seating error that occurred during boarding. Your cooperation would be greatly appreciated as we resolve this administrative issue." Commander Reeves maintained his steady gaze on the businessman while addressing the flight attendant. "Ma'am, I need you to understand something important about Master Sergeant Voss. She is not just any service member requesting preferential treatment." The businessman scoffed loudly, his voice carrying throughout first class. "Look, I do not care what rank she holds or what sob story you're about to tell," he said dismissively. "I paid for this seat, and I am keeping it. These military types think they can just flash their uniforms and get whatever they want. It is pathetic, really." Other first-class passengers began paying closer attention to the confrontation. The woman in designer heels from the gate area had somehow secured a first-class seat and was now watching with obvious interest. Several passengers pulled out their phones, sensing drama worth recording. Commander Reeves stepped closer to the businessman, his voice remaining calm, but carrying an edge that made nearby passengers lean forward. "Sir, before you continue embarrassing yourself, you might want to know exactly who you are talking about." He turned toward Helena with unmistakable respect. "Master Sergeant Voss just returned from her third combat deployment in Afghanistan. But that is not why she deserves this seat." Helena felt her cheeks flush as all attention focused on her, uncertain where Commander Reeves was leading this conversation. Commander Reeves continued speaking while the businessman shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Master Sergeant Voss deserves this seat because 6 months ago, she single-handedly saved 14 soldiers when their convoy was ambushed outside Kandahar." Helena's eyes widened, realizing he somehow knew details about the classified operation. The businessman's expression faltered slightly, but his arrogance remained intact. "Anyone can make up war stories," he muttered. "How do we know any of that actually happened? These military people exaggerate everything to get sympathy from civilians." Commander Reeves reached into his wallet and pulled out a military identification card, holding it where other passengers could see his credentials. "I know because I was the SEAL team commander who coordinated her extraction after she held that position for 14 hours under direct enemy fire." The first-class cabin fell completely silent. Helena stared at Commander Reeves, memories of that hellish day flooding back. The screaming wounded, the constant mortar fire, her hands covered in blood as she worked to keep her soldiers alive until rescue arrived. "But even that is not the most important thing about Master Sergeant Voss," Commander Reeves said, his voice carrying throughout the cabin. 3 weeks ago, she received the Distinguished Service Cross for her actions that day. She is one of only 12 women in Army history to receive that honor. The entire first-class cabin stared in stunned silence as Commander Reeves' words sank in. The Distinguished Service Cross was second only to the Medal of Honor, awarded for extraordinary heroism in combat. The businessman's face went pale as he realized the magnitude of his dismissive comments about the woman standing before him. Helena felt overwhelmed by the sudden attention and recognition. She had requested that the award ceremony be kept private, preferring to let her actions speak quietly rather than seeking public acknowledgement. The memory of her fallen soldiers made any personal recognition feel hollow compared to their sacrifice. Commander Reeves continued addressing the cabin. Master Sergeant Voss carried 4 wounded soldiers to safety under machine gun fire, then returned 3 more times to retrieve the remaining men. She performed battlefield surgery with mortars falling around her position and held off enemy forces until extraction arrived. The woman in designer heels who had whispered cruel comments at the gate now looked mortified. Other passengers began pulling out their phones, not to record drama, but to capture this moment of recognition for a genuine American hero sitting among them. The flight attendant approached Helena with tears in her eyes. "Master Sergeant, on behalf of our entire crew, it would be our honor to have you in first class." The businessman quietly began gathering his belongings without another word of protest. Helena accepted the first-class seat with quiet dignity as the businessman moved to coach without complaint. The transformation in the cabin was immediate and profound. Passengers who had whispered cruel assumptions now looked at her with genuine respect and admiration, understanding they had witnessed something extraordinary. Commander Reeves settled into a seat beside her as the aircraft finally began taxiing toward the runway. "I apologize for making your service public, Master Sergeant," he said quietly. "But some battles are worth fighting, even at 30,000 feet. Helena nodded, still processing the sudden shift in her circumstances. "How did you know about the Distinguished Service Cross ceremony?" she asked. Commander Reeves smiled slightly. "I was there representing Naval Special Warfare. Your actions saved 2 of my men who were embedded with your unit that day." The flight attendant approached with champagne and a warm smile. "Compliments of the captain, Master Sergeant. He wanted you to know that this crew considers it an honor to have you aboard our aircraft." Other first-class passengers began approaching Helena, offering handshakes and quiet words of gratitude. The woman in designer heels who had made cruel comments at the gate appeared at Helena's side, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I am so sorry for what I said earlier," she whispered. "I had no idea who you were or what you had sacrificed for all of us. Thank you for your service and your courage." As the aircraft reached cruising altitude, Helena found herself surrounded by genuine warmth and respect from fellow passengers. The businessman who had initially taken her seat approached during the flight to offer a heartfelt apology, admitting his assumptions had been completely wrong about military service members. Commander Reeves shared stories of other special operations missions where Helena's medical expertise had saved lives, painting a picture of consistent heroism that extended far beyond that single day in Afghanistan. Other passengers listened with rapt attention, understanding they were in the presence of someone truly extraordinary. The flight attendant upgraded Helena's meal and ensured her every comfort throughout the journey. Fellow passengers approached throughout the flight to shake her hand, share their own military family connections, and express gratitude for her sacrifice and service to the nation. As they prepared for landing, Helena reflected on how quickly circumstances could change when people took time to see beyond surface assumptions. The same uniform that had drawn dismissive stares now commanded respect and admiration from everyone around her. Commander Reeves stood as they disembarked, offering one final salute to Helena before disappearing into the crowd. The experience had transformed not just her travel day, but reminded everyone aboard about the quiet heroes who walk among us every day in uniform. If this story moved you, share your thoughts about someone in uniform who deserved more recognition than they received.